Golden light bathes the ancient hills of Jerusalem as dawn breaks on what no one yet realizes will be Prophet Isa's final day among them. His weathered hands, marked by years of humble carpentry and healing, trace patterns in the dust as 12 anxious faces gather around him. The weight of divine knowledge rests heavily on his shoulders, wisdom passed from the heavens that most are not yet ready to receive. In his eyes, there is neither fear nor hesitation, only profound acceptance of what lies ahead. What final revelations will this beloved messenger share before his ascension that the world has forgotten? What truths lie buried beneath centuries of misunderstanding? The humble dwelling sits nestled against the hillside, its stone walls warmed by the strengthening morning light. Inside, the air hangs heavy with anticipation as Prophet Isa's followers gather in a close circle. A wooden cup, simply carved yet somehow luminous in the filtered light, sits at the center of their gathering. Isa passes it carefully to each disciple in turn. "Drink," he says, his voice gentle yet carrying an unusual weight, "and remember this day." The disciples exchange uncertain glances. There have been many gatherings, many teachings, but something in their master's tone suggests this one holds special significance. Yusuf, an elderly follower whose fingers are stained with ink, quietly unrolls a parchment in the corner. His weathered hands tremble slightly as he prepares to record Isa's words. Unlike the others, he has sensed for weeks that something momentous approaches. "Master," says Andreas, a fisherman with sun-bronzed skin and direct eyes, "the marketplace buzzes with rumors. The authorities seek reasons to move against you." "Let them seek," Isa replies, his calm unwavering. Each messenger faces opposition when truth challenges comfort. A younger disciple, Thomas, shifts uncomfortably. "But shouldn't we leave Jerusalem, return to the countryside where you can teach in safety?" A soft smile crosses Isa's face. Is a lamp lit to be hidden? Is truth revealed only to those who present no challenge? Outside, the wind rises suddenly, rustling through olive branches with unusual force. Several disciples glance up, startled by the timing. "Even nature recognizes what approaches," murmurs Miriam, one of the women followers who sits slightly apart, her perceptive eyes rarely leaving Isa's face. The gathering grows tense as disagreements surface among them. Some believe Isa should claim greater authority, challenge the religious hierarchy directly. Others urge caution, patience, a slower spreading of his revolutionary ideas about God's nature and human devotion. "Your teachings about the coming messenger after you," says Philip hesitantly. "They disturb many. The priests say it borders on blasphemy to suggest God would send another after the promised one." Isa rises slowly, moving to the small window where shafts of light illuminate dancing dust particles. For a moment he seems to be looking at something far beyond the Jerusalem hills. When a teacher prepares students, does he reveal all knowledge at once, or does wisdom unfold as readiness grows? He turns to face them, his expression both compassionate and resolute. "Humanity is on a journey. I am not the beginning nor the end of God's guidance." Several disciples shift uncomfortably. This very teaching has caused many former followers to abandon him. "Remember the signs," Isa continues, gesturing with open palms. "I breathe life into clay birds by God's permission. I heal the blind and lepers by God's permission. These are not my powers, but signs from the one who sent me." Yusuf's quill scratches steadily against parchment, capturing every word. A shadow passes across the doorway. Yaqub enters, slightly breathless. "Master, more people gather outside. They've heard you are here." Isa nods calmly. "We will share bread with them shortly. But first," he places his hand on the wooden cup again, "there are truths I must share with you alone, things that must be preserved after I have gone." A heavy silence falls. Though he has hinted before about leaving them, the finality in his tone now cannot be missed. Bartholomew opens his mouth to object, but something in Isa's gaze silences him. "Today," Isa says with quiet authority that draws everyone closer, "I will tell you of matters that many generations will struggle to understand, of my nature, my purpose, and the greater plan that stretches far beyond my time among you." The wooden cup catches a ray of sunlight, gleaming momentarily like something celestial rather than earthly. Outside, the crowds continue to gather, unaware that this ordinary day in Jerusalem will become an inflection point in divine history. Isa reaches within his simple robe and withdraws a weathered scroll, its edges frayed from frequent handling. The disciples lean forward as he carefully unrolls it across his knees, revealing ancient text in faded ink. This is the scroll of prophecy, containing predictions passed down through generations. These words were written centuries before my birth, Isa says, his finger tracing the script, yet they speak of events unfolding now in our lifetime. The room falls silent as he begins to read prophecies familiar to many present, words about a coming messenger, a light to the nations. What surprises them is his interpretation. You have been taught that these words describe a king who would restore earthly glory to our people, Isa explains, his voice gentle but firm. Yet divine messengers rarely come as expected. The powerful look for power, the wealthy for wealth, the learned for complex wisdom that validates their learning. Andreas frowns. Are you saying the prophecies are wrong? Not wrong, Isa corrects, misunderstood. The victory promised is not of armies and palaces, but of truth over falsehood, light over darkness, compassion over hardness of heart. Several disciples nod thoughtfully, while others appear troubled. These interpretations challenge lifelong beliefs. There is more, Isa continues, unrolling the scroll further. Words that speak not only of me, but of one to come after, one whom I will call Ahmad, the praised one. A murmur ripples through the gathering. This teaching, shared privately before, remains controversial, even among his closest followers. How can this be? Philip objects. The final messenger has come. You are here among us now. Isa smiles with patient understanding. Did the first messenger nullify those who came after? Did Moses make David unnecessary? God's guidance unfolds across time as humanity's capacity to understand grows. Yusuf's quill moves rapidly across parchment, capturing every word while the other disciples debate among themselves. The one to come will confirm the truth I bring and clarify what becomes distorted, Isa continues, just as I confirmed the truth brought by those before me. He points to specific passages, explaining how prophecies often contain layers of meaning that become clear only after fulfillment. The disciples listen with mixed reactions, some fascinated, others visibly struggling. Master, Tomas ventures, if you speak of another messenger to come, what becomes of your teachings? Will they be replaced? Not replaced, Isa replies, looking at each face in turn. Fulfilled. The message at its heart remains unchanged across all prophets. There is one God, and humanity is called to know, love, and serve him with devoted hearts. Outside, the growing crowd can be heard, their murmurs drifting through open windows. They await healing, blessing, and teachings that comfort rather than challenge. Isa gazes toward the sound momentarily, compassion filling his expression. The wider world is not ready for all truths at once, he says quietly. Even you, my closest companions, struggle with certain revelations. Miriam, who has been silently attentive, speaks up. The authorities claim you make yourself equal to God when you speak of your special relationship with him. Isa's expression turns solemn. This is perhaps the most dangerous misunderstanding of all. I am a messenger, beloved by God, created by divine will, as was Adam, without a father. My birth was miraculous, but I remain human. Those who elevate messengers above humanity miss the very purpose of our sending. He carefully rolls the scroll closed, holding it reverently before passing it to Yusuf for safekeeping. Remember this always. All power I demonstrate comes by God's permission alone. Every healing, every miracle points not to my divinity, but to the one who sent me. His voice grows softer, more intimate. After I am gone, many will begin claiming I am more than human. This distortion will grow across centuries until the coming of Ahmad, who will restore the true understanding. The disciples exchange troubled glances, sensing that these words foreshadow separation they cannot yet comprehend. The simple meal laid before them remains largely untouched. A loaf of bread sits broken at the center, its fractured pieces mirroring the growing division among the disciples. Judah, a man of serious countenance and measured words, tears a piece deliberately and sets it aside. These teachings trouble many who have followed you faithfully, he says, his voice low but tense. To suggest another messenger will come centuries after you, it contradicts everything we've understood about God's plan. Isa regards him with compassion rather than frustration. The human heart resists expansion once it believes it has found completion. Across the room, the followers have unconsciously separated into smaller groups, some clustering near Issa, others drawing apart to whisper among themselves. The broken bread between them becomes more symbolic with each passing moment. "Remember when I first spoke in the synagogue of my hometown?" Issa asks, his eyes distant with memory. "I read from Isaiah's prophecy and said it was fulfilled in their hearing. They tried to throw me from a cliff that very day." Several disciples nod, having heard this story before. Those people had known me since childhood. They had fixed expectations of who I was and who the Messiah should be. When reality challenged their certainty, they chose certainty over truth. Judah's expression remains troubled. "This is different. We've accepted you as the promised one, despite your humble origins. But now you speak of another to come, as if your message is somehow incomplete." Issa rises slowly, approaching Judah with gentle purpose. He sits beside the conflicted disciple, taking a piece of the broken bread. Issa foundation incomplete because it is not the entire house. Issa father's teaching incomplete because his child will learn more after he is gone. He places his hand on Judah's shoulder. God's wisdom unfolds across generations. No single messenger carries the entirety of divine revelation. Judah looks away, unconvinced yet unwilling to directly challenge his teacher. Nearby, Thomas whispers to Philip, "The religious authorities were saying just yesterday that Issa claims too much. Now some among us worry he claims too little." Their hushed laughter carries an edge of nervousness. Miriam approaches, settling silently near Issa. Her presence seems to ease the tension somewhat. "I have watched many walk away when your teachings challenge their expectations," she says quietly. "The wealthy young man who couldn't surrender his possessions, the scholars who couldn't accept your interpretations of law, the zealots who wanted a military leader instead of a spiritual one." Issa nods, gratitude for her understanding evident in his eyes. "With each teaching that separates followers from comfort, we come closer to the core of what matters," he responds. "Those who remain despite discomfort are being prepared for something greater." Andreas interjects, his practical nature seeking clarity. "Master, you've spoken of leaving us, then of another messenger coming in a distant time. What are we to do in the years between? How will we know we follow the right path?" Izzy looks around the room, meeting each troubled gaze with steadiness. "You will have my words, preserved by faithful hearts like Yusuf's. You will have the spirit of truth to guide you. And you will recognize truth by its fruits. Does it lead to greater compassion, deeper devotion to God, more sincere care for all people? Or does it breed division, pride, and hardness of heart?" He takes another piece of the broken bread, holding it up. "See how this loaf is now in many pieces, yet each piece provides the same nourishment. The outward form changes, but the substance remains." The tension in the room hasn't dissipated entirely, but something in Izzy's manner, his patient certainty, his willingness to meet doubt without defensiveness, calms the immediate discord. Judah still appears troubled, but now contemplative rather than resistant. He takes the bread Izzy offers him, a simple act that acknowledges continued communion despite uncertainty. Outside, the afternoon sun casts lengthening shadows through the windows. Time seems to be moving too quickly towards something none of them fully comprehend. Yet all can sense approaching. A commotion at the doorway draws everyone's attention. Yaqub enters, followed by a middle-aged couple. Between them walks a small boy, perhaps 7 years old. His steps are hesitant, hands outstretched, eyes clouded with the milky film of blindness. "Master," Yaqub says quietly, "this family has traveled 3 days to find you. Their son has never seen the light of day." The disciples make way as Issa rises to meet them. The parents fall to their knees, exhaustion and desperate hope etched in their faces. "Please," the mother whispers, "if you are willing, heal our son." Issa kneels before the child, his movements deliberate and gentle. He studies the boy's unseeing eyes without speaking. The room falls completely silent. Even Judah, still troubled by the earlier teachings, watches with undisguised interest. "What is your name, child?" Issa asks softly. "Eli." The boy answers, his head tilting toward the sound of Issa's voice. "Eli, do you believe that God can restore your sight?" The boy nods without hesitation. "Mother says God sent you to help those who suffer." Issa smiles, though the child cannot see it. "Your mother speaks truth." He turns to his disciples. "Observe carefully and remember what you witness." From the earthen floor, Isa scoops a small amount of dust into his palm. He spits into it, mixing the saliva and clay with his finger until it forms a soft paste. The disciples exchange glances. They have seen him heal before, but rarely with such deliberate ritual. By God's permission, Isa says clearly, not by my power but by the one who sent me. With gentle fingertips, he applies the clay mixture to the boy's eyelids. The child flinches slightly at the touch, but remains still, trembling with anticipation. Now, Eli, Isa instructs, go with your parents to the pool of Siloam and wash your eyes. What God has willed shall come to pass. The father appears confused. But Master, couldn't you simply speak the word? Why must we go elsewhere to complete the healing? Faith requires action, Isa answers, rising to his feet. And sometimes the journey itself is part of the healing. After the family departs, accompanied by Jakub, the room erupts in discussion. Some disciples seem troubled by the method, others defensive of their teacher. Why use clay and saliva? Andreas questions, I've seen you heal with just a touch or even a word from across a distance. Isa's expression remains serene as he cleanses his hands in a basin. Different ailments, different hearts require different approaches. The clay reminds us of our creation, that the same God who formed mankind from earth can reshape what has been malformed. Philip nods thoughtfully, and sending them to wash at Siloam tests their faith. More than that, Isa replies, it gives them part in their own healing. The boy will remember this day not as magic performed upon him, but as a journey of participation in God's work. Miriam, who has been watching Isa closely, speaks what others have not articulated. You're teaching them, and us, how to receive miracles after you're gone. A poignant silence follows her observation. Isa meets her gaze with appreciation for her insight. The clay and the water are physical elements, yet the healing comes from beyond the physical, he confirms. Remember this when people debate whether miracles come through spirit alone or require earthly elements. Judah, still keeping slight distance, cannot restrain his practical question. What if the boy remains blind even after washing? What becomes of his faith then? A valid concern, Isa acknowledges without defensiveness. Yet even then, a greater healing can occur. The recognition that God's wisdom sometimes works through what we perceive as unanswered prayers. Before further discussion can develop, excited voices approach from outside. The door bursts open as Jakub returns with the family. Eli enters without guidance, his eyes clear and bright, darting from face to face with the wonder of newfound sight. I can see, he exclaims, running directly to Isa. I saw the water, the sky, my parents' faces. His mother follows, tears streaming down her cheeks, a miracle by God's hand through you, teacher. The disciples watch, their theological debates momentarily forgotten in the face of transformative joy. Even the skeptical among them cannot deny what stands before them, a child born blind now gazing in wonder at a world revealed. Remember, Isa says quietly to his disciples, it is by God's permission alone. This is the truth that must never be forgotten. The sun reaches its zenith, casting almost no shadows, as Isa leads his followers into a small walled garden adjacent to the dwelling. At the center stands a simple stone sundial, its gnomon pointing straight upward, marking the precise midday hour. The fullness of time, Isa says, gesturing toward the sundial. Just as this marker shows the perfect center of day, we stand at a pivotal moment between what has been revealed and what is yet to come. The disciples settle in a semicircle before him, their faces illuminated by the direct overhead light. The healing of the blind boy has restored a measure of unity among them, though questions still linger in some expressions. You have witnessed healing by God's permission, Isa begins, his voice carrying clearly in the still midday air. The same permission that allowed me to breathe life into clay birds, to know what is in your houses and what you have stored away, to raise the dead back to life. He pauses, looking intently at each face. Why do you suppose God granted such signs through me? Andreas answers first, to prove you are sent from God. Partly, Isa acknowledges with a slight nod, but signs alone do not guarantee acceptance. Many witnessed miracles, yet walked away unchanged. To fulfill prophecies about the Messiah, offers Thomas, again partly true. Isa moves to the sundial, tracing its edge thoughtfully. Consider how God has sent guidance throughout time. Did not Moses bring signs? Did not David receive divine inspiration for his psalms? Each messenger came with evidence appropriate to their time and people. Yusuf, who has brought his parchment outside, records each word meticulously. In the time of Moses, magic held sway in Pharaoh's court, so God granted Moses signs that overcame the magicians. In my time, people suffer greatly from illness with little healing available, so God permits me to heal as evidence of divine mercy. Philip leans forward. And what of the messenger you say will come after you? What signs will accompany him? The greatest sign will be a book, Issa replies, his expression brightening. Words of such profound truth and beauty that those who hear them will recognize their divine origin. Where I brought healing to bodies, he will bring healing to souls across countless generations. Judah, still maintaining slight distance, cannot contain his skepticism. A book. How could mere words compare to raising the dead or healing blindness? Do not underestimate the power of divine revelation, Issa responds gently. Physical miracles affect individuals in a single moment, but words of truth transform millions across centuries. He looks up at the sun directly overhead. This moment of light will pass by evening, but truth persists through the darkest nights of history. A sudden understanding seems to dawn on Miriam's face. The miracles people witness through you point beyond yourself to God. The book you speak of will do the same, directing hearts toward the one reality behind all creation. Precisely, Issa affirms, pleased by her insight. All messengers, all scriptures, all signs share this single purpose, to guide humanity back to recognition of the one who created them. He returns to the center of the group, his presence somehow more commanding in the direct sunlight. There is another reason I speak of these matters today. Some among the authorities have begun claiming I attribute divine nature to myself, that I claim to be God incarnate rather than God's messenger. Several disciples shift uncomfortably, aware of these dangerous accusations. Let me be absolutely clear, Issa continues, his voice gaining intensity without raising in volume. I am a human being, created by God's will, granted special favor and responsibility, but human nonetheless. Anyone who elevates me to divinity misunderstands everything I have taught. The sundial's shadow begins to extend ever so slightly eastward, marking the gradual passing of the pivotal hour. The messenger to come will clarify this truth that will become distorted after my departure. He will restore pure understanding of God's oneness, removing all partners and intermediaries that human confusion will establish. Yaqub, who has been keeping watch, approaches with concern on his face. Master, more people gather outside, including some who appear to be watching on behalf of the temple authorities. Issa acknowledges this with calm acceptance. It is as expected, the light reveals, but some prefer shadows. He turns back to his closest disciples. We have little time remaining. Are you prepared to receive harder truths that must be preserved? Though uncertainty flickers across several faces, each disciple nods in turn. Even Judah, despite his reservations, moves closer to hear what comes next. In the cool marble hall of the high priest's residence, a very different gathering takes place. Religious authorities in formal robes sit in a semicircle, their faces grave as they listen to reports. A Roman coin passes from hand to hand among them, a silver denarius bearing Caesar's profile, symbol of the occupying power that maintains an uneasy peace in Jerusalem. He healed another child today, reports a thin man standing before the council, a boy born blind, using clay and spittle as a poultice. Caiaphas, the high priest, receives the coin last, turning it thoughtfully between his fingers. Always these healings, the people flock to him like sheep without a shepherd. It goes beyond healings now, says another council member, an elderly man with calculating eyes. Our sources report he speaks of another messenger to come in the distant future, one who will supplant our traditions entirely. Murmurs of concern spread through the gathering. Nicodemus, a respected elder, raises his hand for attention. I have heard this teacher myself. His words carry wisdom and compassion. Perhaps we should listen before judging. Listen, scoffs another. While he undermines everything we preserve, he claims our most sacred traditions are merely preparatory, that a final revelation will come through a foreign line, not from our people at all. Caiaphas sets the coin down definitively. The issue is not just religious. You all know how delicately we balance Roman tolerance with our people's yearnings for liberation. One false Messiah, causing sufficient disturbance, could bring Roman legions down upon all of us. He rises, pacing with measured steps. Remember the Galilean rebels last Passover. Rome crucified 500 in a single day as an example. We cannot risk such bloodshed again. A younger priest leans forward earnestly. But this does not preach rebellion. He speaks of a kingdom not of this world, of spiritual rather than political transformation, which makes him more dangerous, not less, counters Caiaphas. Armed rebels can be identified and eliminated, but ideas, especially appealing religious ideas that challenge established authority, these spread like fire through dry grass. An aide enters discreetly, whispering to an elder who then addresses the gathering. We have confirmation. Isaiah of Nazareth is currently in the city, teaching a small group in the upper quarter. A growing crowd gathers outside the dwelling. And what exactly does he teach today? Asks Nicodemus, still seeking moderation. The informant consults his notes. Strange doctrines about his nature, insisting he is human, not divine, despite his miracle working. He speaks of being a messenger only, with all power coming from God alone. Blasphemy by excessive humility, mutters one elder sardonically. He denies his own divinity to make room for another prophet he claims will come centuries hence. Caiaphas retrieves the Roman coin, holding it up so light catches its profile. We maintain peace by carefully balancing tradition with pragmatic accommodation to Rome. This teacher disrupts that balance from both sides, appearing to challenge Rome with messianic claims while simultaneously undermining our religious authority by relativizing our traditions. He places the coin deliberately on the table before him. The question is not whether action must be taken, but when and how. He has committed no crime under Roman law, Nicodemus points out, and he breaks no definitive religious statute. On what grounds could we move against him? His claims about future revelation directly challenge the finality of our covenant, responds another elder, and his healings on the Sabbath violate our interpretations of sacred law. Caiaphas nods slowly. These are sufficient grounds under our authority. As for Rome, they care only for peace and tax collection. If we present this teacher as a potential source of unrest, they will not interfere with our judgment. What if he is indeed sent from God? Nicodemus asks quietly. The room falls silent at the uncomfortable question. After a moment, the high priest replies with practiced certainty. All new claimants to revelation must be tested against established truth. Our traditions have preserved our people through centuries of hardship. We cannot risk all on the words of one charismatic teacher, no matter how compelling his signs. He looks around the room, gauging support. Most faces show agreement, though some remain troubled. It is decided then. We will send temple guards to bring him in for questioning after nightfall. When the crowds have dispersed, a formal inquiry will determine how to proceed. The Roman coin gleams in the lamplight, a silent reminder of worldly power that constrains their actions. The very power this troublesome teacher seems so strangely uninterested in challenging directly, yet threatens nonetheless through his radical reinterpretation of prophecy and tradition. The afternoon sun casts longer shadows as Isa leads his followers to a small olive grove adjacent to the dwelling. The crowd has grown, with perhaps 30 people now gathered, the inner circle of disciples, various followers from Jerusalem, and curious onlookers drawn by rumors of the teacher's presence. Isa settles beneath a gnarled olive tree, reaching down to scoop a handful of small seeds from a patch of wild grasses. He holds them in his open palm, the tiny grains catching sunlight as they rest against his skin. Consider how God reveals truth to humanity. He begins, his voice carrying easily through the hushed gathering. If I were to plant these seeds in different types of soil, what would happen? Andreas, ever practical, responds. The same seed would grow differently depending on the soil. Some would flourish, others wither. Precisely, Isa confirms, divine revelation is consistent in its source, but received differently according to the heart's readiness. He lets a few seeds fall through his fingers, watching them scatter. Some hearts are like rocky ground, where truth finds no depth to root, others like fertile soil, where understanding grows and bears fruit. A scholarly-looking man near the back calls out, "Teacher, why does God not simply make all hearts ready? Why speak in parables rather than plain instruction?" Isa smiles appreciatively at the question. When a father teaches his young son, does he immediately share the complexities he would discuss with fellow adults? Or does he adapt wisdom to the child's developing understanding? He closes his hand gently around the remaining seeds, then opens it again to show them. Humanity itself grows in understanding across generations. What could not be fully grasped by earlier peoples becomes comprehensible to later ones. Miriam, seated nearby, extends her hand, and Isa pours a few seeds into her palm. So each messenger brings what their particular time and people need most, she suggests, and can best understand, Isa affirms. Through Moses came the law when structure was needed. Through David came the Psalms when spiritual devotion needed expression. Through me comes healing and clarification when rigidity has overtaken compassion. He looks around at the diverse faces watching him, fishermen and farmers alongside scholars and skeptics. And through the messenger to come will arise a complete guidance, preserved perfectly until the end of days. Judah, still maintaining some distance but clearly listening intently, raises an objection. If earlier revelations were incomplete, were they flawed? Did God provide imperfect guidance? Isa rises, walking to a young olive sapling growing beside the ancient tree. Is this sapling flawed because it isn't yet fully grown, or is it perfectly suited to its stage of development? He touches the young tree gently. Earlier revelations were perfect for their moment in humanity's spiritual growth. What changes is not divine truth, but human capacity to comprehend it. He returns to the center of the group, opening his palm again to reveal the few remaining seeds. When a teacher has many students of different abilities, does he teach them all identically? Or does he adapt his approach while maintaining the essential truth? An elderly woman speaks up, her voice wavering slightly. I've raised 7 children, teacher. Each one needed different guidance, though I loved them equally. Isa nods with warm appreciation. The wisdom of motherhood reflects divine wisdom. God meets each people, each generation where they stand, guiding them one step forward from there. The light shifts as clouds momentarily pass before the sun, creating dappled patterns across the gathering. Isa watches this play of light and shadow thoughtfully. The messenger to come will face a world very different from ours. Empires will have fallen, new powers risen, languages we do not speak will flourish, yet the essential human condition, our need for connection with our Creator, will remain unchanged. He presses the remaining seeds into the earth beside him with gentle pressure. What I plant in your hearts today may seem small, like these seeds. Some of you grasp only parts of what I share. That is as it should be. Understanding grows with time, with reflection, with life experience. Yusuf, who has been writing continuously, looks up with a penetrating question. Master, if your teachings will be partially forgotten or distorted before the coming of the final messenger, how will sincere seekers recognize truth when it returns in its complete form? By its fruits, Isa answers without hesitation. Truth leads toward compassion, toward justice, toward recognition of human dignity, toward worship of the one God alone, without partners or intermediaries. He looks intently around the circle. Beware any teaching, attributed to me or anyone else, that leads toward hardness of heart, toward violence, toward elevation of some people above others. The seeds now planted disappear from view, their potential hidden beneath the soil, awaiting conditions that will allow them to fulfill their purpose, just as the complete understanding of Isa's message awaits its proper time. As the larger crowd disperses for evening prayers, Isa gestures to Andreas, Yusuf, and Miriam. Come with me. There are matters we must discuss in private. He leads the 3 chosen disciples to a small room at the back of the dwelling, where a single oil lamp casts gentle light. On a low table rests a small bronze mirror, polished to reflection. Isa seats himself, inviting the others to join him in close proximity. You 3 have shown the deepest understanding of my teachings, he begins, his voice softer than when addressing the larger group. Your hearts are ready for truths that others cannot yet bear. Andreas looks troubled. Master, why exclude the others? Aren't we all your followers? Isa lifts the small mirror, angling it so the lamp's flame reflects within its surface. Not everyone can look directly at bright light without turning away. For some, reflection is the only way they can begin to perceive the brightest truths. He passes the mirror to each disciple in turn. As Miriam receives it last, she studies her own reflection thoughtfully. What do you see? Isa asks her. Myself, she answers simply, but transformed by the light. Isa nods with approval. The mirror changes nothing about you, yet allows you to see yourself as you truly are. He reclaims the mirror, setting it carefully on the table. So it is with divine messengers. We reflect God's light so that humanity might recognize their true nature. A heaviness settles over his expression as he continues. My time with you draws to its conclusion. Before tomorrow's sunset, I will no longer walk among you. Despite previous hints of his departure, this direct statement lands with shocking finality. Andreas reaches out instinctively, grasping Isa's arm. Master, no, there must be another way. There is no avoiding what is divinely ordained, Isa responds gently. But you must understand what will truly happen, for great confusion will arise afterward. Yusuf readies his parchment, hands slightly trembling. Isa gently covers the parchment, shaking his head. Some things must be preserved only in faithful hearts, not in writing where they might be discovered prematurely. He lowers his voice further. Tomorrow, those who oppose me will believe they have captured me. They will claim victory over God's messenger. But the reality will be different from appearances. The three disciples lean closer, sensing the extraordinary importance of this moment. It will seem to many that I suffer and die. Isa continues, his calm unwavering. But God will not allow his messenger to be humiliated. What appears to be me will not be me. God will raise me to himself, protecting me from those who reject divine guidance. Confusion crosses Andreas's face. I don't understand. How can it appear you suffer if you do not? Isa places a hand on his shoulder reassuringly. The wisdom of God surpasses human understanding. What matters is that you know the truth when others claim I have died. I will be alive, raised to God's presence, my mission complete. Miriam's eyes show dawning comprehension. This is why you've emphasized your humanity so strongly today. You knew people would later claim your survival proves divinity. You perceive correctly, Isa affirms. After I am gone, some will begin claiming I am God incarnate or God's literal son. This gravely mistaken belief will spread, becoming the very opposite of what I've taught about God's absolute oneness. He touches the mirror again, his reflection wavering in the polished bronze. People will look at the messenger and mistake him for the source of the light, rather than its reflector. Yusuf, despite the instruction not to write, cannot contain his practical questions. Master, what shall we do after you're taken? How shall we preserve your true teachings? Remain steadfast in prayer, uphold compassion as the heart of faith, maintain absolute monotheism, attributing no partners to God. Isa's gaze intensifies. And when confusion spreads, remember that another messenger will come who will restore the truth of my mission and nature. Andreas struggles visibly with these revelations. How long must we wait for this messenger? How will sincere believers find truth in the meantime? It may be centuries, Isa acknowledges. The final messenger will come when humanity has developed sufficient capacity to preserve revelation perfectly. Until then, sincere souls who seek God with pure hearts will find guidance even amid confusion. Outside, voices call Isa's name as other disciples search for him. The private moment draws to its close. One final counsel, Isa says urgently. When I am taken up, do not worship me. Remember me as God's messenger, as your brother in faith, as one who loved you and taught you to love God above all. The gravest distortion of my message will be the elevation of the messenger above the message itself. As they rise to rejoin the others, Miriam takes a final glance at the mirror. For a moment she could swear the reflection shows not just the present room, but scenes from a distant future, people kneeling before images of Isa, grand structures built in his name, wars fought over interpretations of his nature. She blinks, and the vision vanishes, leaving only the wavering flame of the present moment. The late afternoon sky darkens unexpectedly as heavy clouds gather over Jerusalem. What began as scattered wisps has transformed into an ominous ceiling of grey and indigo, pregnant with imminent rainfall. Disciples glance upward with growing concern, the sudden weather change feeling symbolic of shifting circumstances. Yaqub rushes into the main room, where Isa has rejoined the larger group. Master, he says breathlessly, Jonah has returned from the marketplace with troubling news. A young man steps forward, his expression grave. Temple guards are making inquiries about your whereabouts. They're being discreet, but their intentions seem clear. The high priest's council has been in session since midday. Murmurs of alarm spread through the gathering. Thomas speaks up, voicing what many are thinking. We should leave Jerusalem immediately, return to Galilee where you have more supporters, or at least move to a less-known location, adds Philip. This house is too easily found. Isa remains calm, seemingly unsurprised by the news. He moves to the window, observing the gathering storm clouds. When farmers see such clouds, they prepare for rain. They don't pretend the storm won't come. Andreas approaches, his practical nature seeking clear direction. Then we should prepare as well. Tell us what to do, Master. A rumble of thunder punctuates the moment, causing several disciples to flinch. The weather's dramatic turn adds palpable tension to an already charged atmosphere. Each of you must decide your own course, Isa says, turning back to face them. What approaches will test your faith and understanding. Some of you will falter. Not I, declares Judah with unexpected passion. Even if all others abandon you, I will remain steadfast. Isa regards him with a complex mixture of compassion and foreknowledge. Before the cock crows with tomorrow's dawn, you will have denied knowing me 3 times. Judah recoils as if struck. Impossible, I would die rather than deny you. It is easier to pledge loyalty in a moment of fervor than to maintain it under threat, Isa responds gently. Yet even in failure, there remains the possibility of redemption. The first heavy raindrops begin to strike the roof, their percussion a counterpoint to the tense conversation. The storm has arrived sooner than expected. Jonah, the young messenger, speaks again. Master, what is your instruction? The guards may come at any moment. Several disciples move protectively closer to Isa, while others edge toward the door, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. I will not flee, Isa states with quiet certainty. What is ordained must come to pass, but there is still time for one more shared meal, one final teaching. Lightning flashes, momentarily illuminating the room with harsh brilliance. In that instant, Isa's face appears otherworldly, not with divine radiance, but with absolute human certainty and acceptance. Miriam approaches from where she had been conferring quietly with the other women. The soldiers will not come until after dark. They fear the reaction of the crowds who support you. We have time to prepare the Passover meal. Isa nods gratefully. Then let us use this time well. Our last supper together holds importance beyond what you can currently comprehend. An older disciple named Simeon, who has remained silent until now, speaks up with trembling voice. Master, you speak as if your end approaches, yet you've also said God will protect you. I don't understand. Both are true. Isa answers, what appears as an ending will be a transformation. Remember what I shared about appearances versus reality. Another flash of lightning, another rumble of thunder. Closer now, the storm directly overhead. Rain falls steadily, creating a curtain of water beyond the windows. Those who seek to extinguish God's light will believe they succeed. Isa continues, their apparent victory will become the very means of their ultimate failure, though this will not be understood until the final messenger clarifies all. Andreas, returning from checking the street outside, interrupts with urgent news. There's movement near the temple. A group of guards appears to be gathering, receiving instructions. Decisions can no longer be postponed. Some disciples begin collecting their few possessions, preparing either to stand with their teacher or to slip away into the stormy evening. Isa watches them with perfect understanding, passing no judgment on those whose courage fails. Whoever chooses to remain, know this, events will unfold that defy your expectations. Trust not in appearances, but in God's perfect plan. Outside, beyond the sheltering walls, Jerusalem grows dark as the storm intensifies. The gathering clouds, heavy with rain, shadow the city like divine witnesses to the momentous events beginning to unfold beneath them. The storm subsides to a gentle rainfall as evening deepens. Oil lamps cast warm light throughout the main room, where a simple meal has been prepared. At the center of the low table sits freshly baked bread, alongside a bowl of olives glistening with oil. Humble fare for what several disciples now understand may be their final gathering with their teacher. Isa enters from a small side chamber where he has been in prayer. His expression is serene despite the gravity of circumstances. He gestures for all to be seated around the table, waiting until each person finds their place before taking his own. Before we share this meal, he begins, there is something I must do. To everyone's surprise, he rises, removes his outer robe, and wraps a towel around his waist. Retrieving a basin of water, he kneels before Andreas, the first disciple in the circle. "Master, what are you doing?" Andreas asks, clearly uncomfortable. "Providing an example you must remember," Isa answers, gently taking Andreas's foot and washing it with careful attention. In a world where leaders demand service, true spiritual leadership begins with serving others. One by one he moves around the circle, washing each disciple's feet, even those who might soon betray or abandon him. Some try to protest, others accept in humble silence. A few are moved to tears by this demonstration of servant leadership. When he completes the circle, Isa returns to his place, replacing his robe before addressing them. "You call me teacher and master, and rightly so, yet I have shown myself as servant to you all. Remember this when the time comes that others call you master or seek to elevate you." He reaches for the bread at the center of the table, breaking it deliberately into pieces. The sound of tearing bread carries a poignant finality in the quiet room. "This bread we share," he continues, passing pieces to each person. "Remember it as my body, given in service to God's purpose. When you break bread together, after I am gone, let it remind you of our communion this night." The disciples receive the bread with solemn reverence, the weight of the moment palpable in the flickering lamplight. Judah, seated slightly apart, accepts his portion with visible conflict in his expression. Isa meets his troubled gaze with compassion rather than condemnation. "What you must do, do quickly," he says quietly. Confusion passes between the other disciples, but before questions can form, Isa continues by taking the bowl of olives, offering it around the circle. "The bitterness of these fruits," he says, reminds us that service often brings suffering. Yet from suffering pressed upon the faithful comes the oil of wisdom that illuminates the world. As the meal continues, Isa's teachings become more direct, more urgent. The storm outside has created a cocoon of isolation around the gathering, as if the world beyond has temporarily receded to allow these final moments of intimacy. After tonight, Isa tells them, "You will be scattered. What you witness will confuse and frighten you. Some will fall into despair, believing all is lost. Tell us plainly what will happen," urges Tomas, ever seeking clarity. Isa considers his words carefully. "Those who oppose me will believe they have conquered God's purpose. They will claim to have killed God's messenger." He pauses, ensuring they understand the distinction in his phrasing. "They will believe this, and the world will record it thus, but appearances deceive when divine wisdom operates beyond human understanding." Miriam, who has been mostly silent, speaks with quiet certainty. "You have said God will raise you to himself, protecting you from your enemies." "Yes," Isa confirms, "though few will comprehend this truth until the final messenger clarifies all things centuries from now." The meal continues with a poignant mixture of tension and tenderness. Common bread and bitter olives transform into sacred elements through the meaning Isa imparts to them. Ordinary disciples struggle to comprehend extraordinary circumstances about to unfold. As they finish eating, Isa performs a simple ritual washing of hands. The water, now tinged with the dust of Jerusalem, symbolizes the purification that comes through difficult passages. "I have told you these things, so that when they occur, you will remember my words and believe," he says. "Though darkness comes, it cannot overcome the light." Judah rises abruptly and moves toward the door. Several disciples watch him go with suspicion, but Isa merely nods, acknowledging what must transpire. As the door closes behind Judah, a subtle shift occurs in the room's atmosphere, as if events set in motion long ago now accelerate toward their culmination. The remaining disciples draw closer to their teacher, sensing that precious few moments remain before everything changes irrevocably. "Master," whispers Andreas, "where will you go after whatever happens tonight?" "Where I go, you cannot follow now," Isa answers gently. "But the path will be revealed in time to those with eyes to see and hearts to understand." Night has fully descended upon Jerusalem as Isa leads his remaining disciples through quiet streets toward a garden of ancient olive trees. The rain has stopped, leaving behind a fresh scent and occasional drops that fall from leaves when stirred by the gentle breeze. Their footsteps echo against stone as they move away from the city's center into the more secluded hills. "Why this garden, Master?" Tomas asks, his voice hushed in the darkness. It is a place of pressing, Isa answers, gesturing toward an olive press, visible in the moonlight that now emerges through breaking clouds. The massive stone wheel stands as a silent testament to how pressure extracts what is most precious and useful. The disciples gather in a clearing among the gnarled trees, their trunks twisted by centuries of growth, witnesses to generations of human joy and suffering. Isa looks at their concerned faces, illuminated dimly by the single lamp they've brought. "Remain here and keep watch," he instructs them. "I must pray alone." He moves deeper into the garden, eventually kneeling upon the damp earth some distance from his followers. Though they cannot hear his words, they observe his posture of complete submission, forehead touching the ground in profound humility before the Creator. Andreas whispers to those nearest, "I've never seen him pray with such intensity." Minutes stretch into an hour as Isa remains in prayer. The disciples struggle against growing weariness, their day having been filled with emotional and spiritual exertion. One by one, despite their intentions, their eyes grow heavy. Isa returns to find most of them dozing. He gently rouses Andreas, "Could you not watch with me for 1 hour? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Forgive me, Master." Andreas responds, embarrassed. "What can we do to help you in this hour?" "Pray that you may be steadfast when trial comes," Isa answers, before returning to his solitary communion with God. In his secluded spot, illuminated now by moonlight, Isa's prayer becomes audible to no earthly ears but clear in the spiritual realm. "My Lord, if it be possible within your perfect plan, let this cup pass from me." His voice trembles slightly, his humanity fully evident. Then, with renewed strength, "Yet not my will but yours be done. I submit entirely to your wisdom." Sweat beads upon his brow despite the cool night air, evidence of his deep spiritual exertion. This is not the effortless prayer of one playing a role, but the genuine struggle of a human messenger facing the culmination of his earthly mission. When he returns again, the disciples have once more succumbed to sleep. This time, Isa does not wake them. Instead, he looks upon them with compassionate understanding. "Sleep now and take your rest," he murmurs, though none hear. "The hour has come." He lifts his gaze to the star-filled sky, now cleared of clouds. "Father, I have completed the work you gave me to do. I have revealed your oneness to those you entrusted to me. Protect them when I am gone. Let them remember the truth when falsehood surrounds them." A profound peace settles over his features, not the absence of concern, but its transcendence. Whatever internal struggle occurred during his solitary prayer has resolved into perfect acceptance. In the distance, the faint glow of approaching torches becomes visible, moving along the path from Jerusalem. Isa observes this without alarm, as one who sees expected guests arriving at the appointed hour. He returns to the sleeping disciples, this time rousing them all with gentle urgency. "Rise, the time has come." Those who think they can extinguish God's light approach. The disciples awaken in confusion, disoriented by their unexpected sleep. As awareness returns, they notice the approaching lights with alarm. "Should we flee, Master?" Philip asks, already half risen to escape. "How many times must I tell you?" Isa responds, his voice patient despite the circumstances. "What appears to human eyes is not always the complete reality. What is about to unfold must happen exactly as God has ordained." Judah emerges from the shadows beyond the garden's edge, accompanied by temple guards carrying torches and weapons. The flickering light creates shifting patterns across the ancient olive trees, transforming the peaceful garden into a place of dramatic confrontation. Isa steps forward, placing himself between the approaching group and his followers. "Be at peace," he tells his frightened disciples. "Remember what I have told you. Though it will appear that darkness triumphs, the light cannot be extinguished." The olive press stands as silent witness to this moment of supreme pressure, when what is most precious will be extracted through apparent destruction, its value only fully understood by future generations who will benefit from the illumination it provides. The garden fills with harsh light as torches carried by temple guards create a flickering golden perimeter around the small clearing. Shadows leap and dance across ancient olive trees, transforming their gnarled forms into spectral witnesses. The gentle night breeze carries the smell of smoke and sweat as two worlds collide in this sacred space. "Which one is he?" demands a temple captain, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Judah steps forward, his face a complex mixture of determination and regret. I will greet him with a kiss, that is the one you seek. Issa watches this exchange with perfect composure. When Judah approaches, he meets his troubled gaze directly. Friend, do what you have come to do. The kiss of identification is delivered with trembling lips. As Judah pulls away, Issa whispers so only he can hear, all is according to divine plan. Even this moment serves God's purpose. Confusion flickers across Judah's face before he steps back, his role completed. The guards move forward with ropes to bind their prisoner. Andreas suddenly produces a small blade, lunging at the nearest official and catching his ear with the edge of the weapon. No, Issa commands with unexpected authority. Put away your weapon. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. He turns to the injured man, touching his wound with gentle fingers. Be healed, he says simply, and the bleeding stops. The guards pause, momentarily confused by this act of compassion toward an enemy. Their captain recovers first. Bind him, he orders gruffly. As they move to obey, Issa addresses them directly. Why do you come with weapons and torches, as if I were a criminal? Day after day I taught in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me there. We follow orders, the captain responds tersely, though discomfort shows in his averted gaze. Issa turns to his disciples, who stand frozen between fight and flight. This happens that the scriptures might be fulfilled. Yet what is written and what truly occurs may appear different to human eyes. The guards now surround him completely, torchlight creating a strange halo effect around his calm figure. Before this night ends, he continues, speaking loudly enough for all to hear, God will demonstrate that no earthly power can prevail against divine will. Something in his tone, not defiance but absolute certainty, causes several guards to step back involuntarily. The disciples, seeing their teacher bound, begin to scatter despite their earlier promises of loyalty. Thomas is the first to disappear into the darkness beyond the torchlight, followed quickly by others. Only Andreas and Yusuf hover at the perimeter, unwilling to abandon their master, yet afraid to share his fate. It is better this way, Issa calls to them. Go now, remember what I have taught you. As the guards begin to lead him from the garden, a strange phenomenon occurs. The torches, though still burning, seem to cast less light. Shadows deepen around the procession, making it difficult to distinguish individual figures clearly. One guard trips over an exposed root, cursing as he regains his balance. What trickery is this, demands the captain, sensing something unusual but unable to identify its cause. Issa makes no response, his face serene despite his bound hands. The procession moves slowly along the path back toward Jerusalem, torchlight creating confused patterns through the increasing mist that rises from the ground. From the perspective of Andreas and Yusuf watching from a safe distance, the figures begin to blur and blend as if reality itself becomes uncertain. I cannot see clearly, Yusuf whispers. Which one is the master? The one in the center, Andreas answers, though with hesitation in his voice. I think, as they follow at a distance, other disciples gradually rejoin them, emerging from their temporary hiding places, all strained to keep sight of the procession ahead. But the combination of darkness, mist and distance makes identification increasingly difficult. What will they do to him? Philip asks, his voice breaking. Andreas shakes his head. I don't know. But remember his words, appearances may deceive, God will protect his messenger. The temple guards and their prisoner reach the outskirts of Jerusalem, their torch-lit procession now visible to watchful residents. News spreads quickly through whispered messages. The controversial teacher from Galilee has been arrested. Inside the high priest's residence, preparations are made to receive the prisoner. Caiaphas adjusts his formal robes, surrounded by council members hastily summoned for this late-night proceeding. Remember, he instructs them, we seek evidence of blasphemy. The Roman authorities care nothing for our religious disputes, but they will support our judgment if we demonstrate threat to public order. Outside, the procession approaches the imposing building, yet something subtle has shifted during the journey. Those who look closely might notice that the figure now led by the guards seems somehow different from the man arrested in the garden, a resemblance close enough to convince casual observers, yet with discrepancies that cause moments of doubt. A peculiar mist rises from the valley floor as midnight approaches Jerusalem. Unlike natural fog, it seems to possess purpose, swirling with unusual patterns as it envelops the path between the garden and the city. Within this ethereal boundary, reality bends in ways invisible to casual observers, but profoundly significant to those with eyes to see. Inside the high priest's courtyard, the prisoner stands surrounded by accusers. Guards maintain their grip on his bound arms, yet occasional confused glances pass between them. Something feels different, though none can precisely identify what has changed since the garden. "You claim to be a messenger from God," Caiaphas states, circling the silent figure. "You speak of another revelation to come, diminishing the finality of our covenant." The accused raises his head, but his features seem strangely indistinct in the torchlight, as if the mist outside has penetrated even these walls, blurring clarity. Andreas and several disciples have followed at a distance, lingering now in the shadows of the courtyard's periphery. A serving girl approaches Andreas, studying his face in the flickering light. "You were with the Galilean," she says, loud enough for others to hear. Fear overtakes Andreas. "I do not know what you're talking about," he replies, turning away. Nearby, Yusuf watches this denial with dismay, yet lacks courage to intervene. His parchment remains hidden beneath his cloak, his chronicler's instinct warring with very human fear. Inside the impromptu trial chamber, the questioning intensifies. "Tell us plainly," demands an elder. "Are you the Messiah?" The prisoner's response comes in a voice that seems simultaneously familiar and strange. "You say that I am." Something in the tone causes Caiaphas to step back, momentary doubt crossing his features before hardening into renewed certainty. "What further testimony do we need? You have heard his blasphemy." Outside in the courtyard, a small commotion erupts as another servant confronts Andreas. "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." "I swear I do not know the man," Andreas insists with increasing desperation. A distant rooster crows, announcing the approach of dawn, though night still holds dominion. Andreas freezes, remembering Issa's prediction of his threefold denial. Shame overwhelms him as he slips away from the courtyard, tears streaming down his face. Meanwhile, beyond human perception, divine forces move with precision. The mist thickens in certain locations while dissipating in others, creating corridors of concealment through which truth passes unseen by those lacking spiritual sight. Far from the high priest's residence, on a secluded hillside overlooking Jerusalem, Issa kneels in prayer. His body, untouched by captors, glows with subtle luminosity in the pre-dawn darkness. This is no mere teacher now, but a messenger at the threshold of transition between earthly mission and divine elevation. "It is accomplished," he whispers to the heavens. "They believe they hold me, while you have protected me as promised." The mist forms a protective dome around him, separating this sacred space from the profane world below, where religious authorities pronounce judgment on someone they believe to be Issa. Back in the city, confusion spreads among witnesses. Some claim to have seen the Galilean teacher led away in chains. Others insist he somehow escaped. Still others report seeing him in two places simultaneously. As dawn approaches, contradictory accounts multiply. Judah, having completed his role in the betrayal, wanders Jerusalem's empty streets in profound distress. Unlike the others, he begins to comprehend the cosmic drama in which he has played a predestined part. The weight of this understanding proves unbearable. In the trial chamber, the case concludes with predictable condemnation. "He deserves death for blasphemy," pronounces Caiaphas, "but we shall deliver him to Roman authorities at dawn, charged with sedition. They alone can execute the sentence, yet something troubling persists, an unnatural quality to the proceedings, a sense that events unfold according to a script beyond human authorship." Several council members shift uncomfortably, unable to articulate their growing unease. On the hillside, divine light begins to surround Esther more intensely. The protective mist thickens, obscuring him from any physical eyes that might chance to look toward this location. Angels, invisible to mortal perception, gather in concentric circles around the messenger, who has fulfilled his earthly mission perfectly. "The world will believe what it needs to believe," Issa acknowledges in prayer. "The truth will remain preserved for those who sincerely seek it, to be fully revealed when the final messenger comes." The first hint of dawn illuminates Jerusalem's eastern horizon, casting the ancient city in soft golden light. A new day approaches, one that future generations will interpret in wildly divergent ways, building theologies and civilizations upon competing understandings of what transpires in these pivotal hours. What appears as defeat to human eyes manifests as victory in the divine realm. What seems like an ending constitutes merely a transition. The messenger will depart physical presence, but the message remains, preserved in faithful hearts and destined for clarification when humanity develops sufficient capacity to receive complete revelation. First light breaks over Jerusalem's ancient stones, washing the eastern sky in luminous gold. On the secluded hillside, where Issa kneels in prayer, this natural radiance merges with something altogether different, a vertical beam of light that connects earth and heaven, visible only to those granted spiritual sight. Issa rises to his feet, his expression serene yet touched with human emotion, the poignancy of departure, compassion for those left behind, anticipation of what lies ahead. His earthly mission reaches its culmination, not in defeat, but in divine elevation. The time has come, he whispers, arms outstretched in perfect submission. The beam of light intensifies, enveloping him in brilliance that would blind physical eyes. Yet this is no mere optical phenomenon. It is the visible manifestation of divine intervention, the literal lifting of God's messenger from earthly constraints. Behold, I raise you to myself, comes the unspoken divine decree, felt rather than heard. I purify you from those who disbelieve. Issa's feet slowly leave the ground, his body ascending within the column of light. There is no struggle, no resistance, only willing surrender to the Creator's perfect plan. The transition begins between physical existence and the elevated state prepared for God's faithful messenger. Meanwhile, across Jerusalem, the confused drama continues. Roman authorities process a prisoner believed to be the controversial Galilean teacher. Conflicting testimonies multiply. Some witnesses swear they observed the teacher healing even after his supposed arrest. Others claim to have seen him in multiple locations simultaneously. Pilate, the Roman governor, looks upon the bound figure presented to him with skeptical eyes. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asks, finding something indefinably different about this prisoner compared to descriptions he'd previously received. Back on the hillside, Issa's ascension continues. His physical form becomes increasingly luminous, transforming beyond earthly substance. This is not death but transcendence, protection through elevation rather than resurrection after destruction. "You will remain in honored station," comes another divine communication, "until you return before the final hour," as a sign. Memories of his earthly ministry flow through Issa's consciousness. The births he blessed, the sick he healed, the hungry he fed, the truth he proclaimed about God's absolute oneness. Each moment fulfilled its purpose in the divine plan. Each miracle demonstrated God's power, working through his willing messenger. The hillside itself seems to participate in this sacred moment. Wildflowers suddenly blooming out of season, grasses swaying in rhythmic patterns, though no wind blows. Creation recognizes its creator's direct intervention, responding with spontaneous celebration. In the city, confusion reaches its peak. The prisoner's face seems to shift subtly, depending on who observes it, and from what angle. Divine wisdom ensures that each person sees what they are spiritually prepared to comprehend, creating a divergence of perception that will echo through centuries of theological debate. 3 women, faithful followers of Issa, make their way furtively through Jerusalem's awakening streets, determined to witness whatever befalls their beloved teacher. Miriam leads them, her intuition drawing her not toward the Roman proceedings, but toward the hillside beyond the city walls. "I feel his presence there," she explains to her skeptical companions, "not where the crowd gathers." As they climb the path, the divine light becomes visible to their faithful eyes, not in its full glory that would overwhelm human perception, but as a softened radiance surrounding the ascending figure of their teacher. "Look," cries one woman, pointing upward in wonder. Miriam falls to her knees, understanding flowing into her heart. "He is not being taken," she whispers. "He is being raised up." They witness the final moments of Issa's visible presence on earth, his body now transformed beyond physical constraints, ascending within the column of light that stretches between realms. His face, turned briefly toward his faithful witnesses, shows neither pain nor fear, but perfect peace. Remember, his voice reaches them through spiritual rather than physical means. "I am protected by God's perfect plan. What appears to others as my end is merely transformation. I will return when the time comes."
The women watch in silent awe until the light gradually fades, leaving empty sky where their teacher had been. Though grief touches them at this separation, it lacks the devastation of bereavement. They understand, with wisdom granted to the faithful few, that something miraculous rather than tragic has occurred. Miriam rises first, a new purpose straightening her shoulders. "We must find the others," she states with quiet authority. "They need to know the truth of what happened here." As they descend the hillside, the sun fully crests Jerusalem's walls, beginning a day that different witnesses will describe in wildly contradictory ways, a divergence of accounts that will spawn centuries of competing theologies, each claiming to possess the definitive truth about the fate of God's messenger.
Evening shadows lengthen across Jerusalem as a small group gathers in an upper room, faces drawn with confusion and grief. The day's events have scattered Isa's followers like chaff in wind, but a core few have found their way back together, drawn by shared devotion and desperate for understanding. In the corner rests a pair of simple sandals, Isa's own footwear, left behind when he was raised from earth. This humble artifact now holds profound significance as perhaps the last physical evidence of his earthly presence. Andreas paces the small space, his earlier denials weighing heavily upon him. Reports from throughout the city contradict each other, he explains to the assembled group. Some claim they saw him executed, others swear they glimpsed him walking freely near the temple afterward. Both cannot be true, reasons Tomas, ever the skeptic, unless what we witnessed was beyond ordinary understanding, completes Miriam. With Yusuf beside her, she recounts what she and the other women observed on the hillside, the column of light, Isa's elevation, his transformation beyond physical form. Silence follows her testimony. Some disciples appear doubtful, others hopeful, all struggling to reconcile these accounts with their own experiences and expectations. Before his arrest, the Master spoke of God raising him up, Philip reminds them. He said appearances would deceive, that what seemed like defeat would be divine protection. Yusuf unrolls his precious parchment, hands trembling slightly. Throughout the tumultuous events, he has somehow preserved his careful records of Isa's final teachings. Here, he points to specific passages. He spoke of being neither killed nor crucified, but rather raised to God. He predicted confusion would surround these events, that competing accounts would emerge. If what Miriam witnessed is true, Andreas says slowly, then those who believe they executed God's messenger have been deceived by appearances, just as he foretold, and we who know the truth bear tremendous responsibility, adds an older disciple who has remained silent until now. We must preserve his true teachings against distortions that will inevitably arise. The room falls quiet as each person contemplates this daunting task. The sandals in the corner, ordinary, worn leather that once touched holy feet, serve as poignant reminder of Isa's human nature alongside his special status. Already, Miriam notes with concern, I've heard some claim he was not merely a messenger, but divine himself. They misinterpret his rescue as resurrection, seeing proof of divinity rather than God's protection of his beloved messenger. Andreas nods gravely. Such misunderstanding was precisely what he warned against in his final hours. He repeatedly emphasized his humanity, that all power came through God's permission, not his own divinity. A young disciple speaks up hesitantly, but how can we combat such misinterpretations? Those claiming he is divine will build powerful institutions around that belief. We are few, and many of us unlearned. Yusuf taps his parchment with quiet confidence. By preserving the true record for those with eyes to see, by living according to his actual teachings rather than elaborate theologies that will develop around his misunderstood departure, and by trusting in the coming of Amand, the final messenger he promised, adds Miriam, the one who will restore clarity to what becomes obscured. As night falls fully over Jerusalem, difficult decisions must be made. Roman authorities continue searching for Isa's closest associates. Religious leaders spread their version of events, already shaping the narrative to serve institutional interests. We cannot stay in Jerusalem, Andreas concludes reluctantly. We must separate, traveling to different regions, each carrying the true teachings to those prepared to receive them. Yusuf produces additional parchments, carefully copied from his original records. I have prepared these for each of you. Guard them well, pass them to those worthy of the knowledge. They plan their departures. Some will travel north to Galilee, others east beyond the Jordan, a few west toward distant lands. Each will carry seeds of truth to be planted in soil far from Jerusalem's politicized religion. Before they part, they gather around the sandals, forming a circle of remembrance. No elaborate ritual, no complex theology, just simple followers, honoring a beloved teacher who showed them God's path through his living example. "Remember," Miriam says softly, "he promised to return before the final hour. Until then, we preserve his true message, that there is one God without partners, that Isa was his honored messenger but still human, that purity of heart matters more than ritual observance, that another messenger will come to restore what becomes corrupted." As they prepare to go their separate ways, each carrying fragments of truth into an uncertain future, the empty sandals remain behind, humble reminders that the most profound spiritual realities often wear the simplest human disguises. The Arabian desert gleams silver under moonlight, vast and eternal, as a solitary figure climbs the rocky path toward the cave of Hira. Muhammad ibn Abdullah, a thoughtful merchant known for his honesty and contemplative nature, seeks solitude for reflection, as has become his custom during the sacred month of Ramadan. Inside the austere cave, far from Mecca's bustle, he settles into meditation. The silence holds a quality of expectation, as if the very air awaits something momentous. Without warning, a presence fills the confined space, not physical yet more real than anything material. "Read," commands a voice that resonates through his entire being. "I cannot read," Muhammad responds truthfully, his heart pounding with fear and wonder. The presence embraces him with overwhelming intensity, then releases him with the command repeated. 3 times this occurs, until finally specific words form within his consciousness, the beginning of revelation that will continue over 23 years, culminating in the Qur'an, preserved perfectly as Isa had prophesied centuries before. As dawn breaks, Muhammad descends the mountain, trembling with the weight of experience beyond ordinary human comprehension. Thus begins the final revelation, completing what previous messengers initiated, clarifying what became distorted, preserving in perfect form what earlier scriptures contained but lost through human alteration. In subsequent revelations, the truth about Isa emerges with crystal clarity, preserved within the protected text of the Qur'an. They did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it appeared to them as if they did. Rather, Allah raised him unto himself. The Messiah, son of Mary, was not but a messenger. Other messengers have passed before him. When Allah said, "O Isa, I shall cause you to die, and shall raise you to myself, and shall clear you of those who disbelieve," each verse illuminates aspects of Isa's nature and mission that had become obscured by competing theologies: his honored status as messenger, his miraculous birth, his performance of miracles by God's permission, his humanity alongside his spiritual elevation, his protection from enemies through divine intervention rather than painful sacrifice. In a modest dwelling in Medina years later, Muhammad explains these truths to a delegation of Christians from Najran, who question him about Isa's nature. "We revere Isa as God's messenger, miraculously born, who performed wonders by God's permission," Muhammad clarifies, "but we reject claims of his divinity, which he himself would deny. God is one without partners or offspring." The Christians appear troubled, their deeply held beliefs challenged by this straightforward correction. "But how then do you explain his apparent death and reported reappearance?" "God protected him from his enemies by raising him directly to heaven," Muhammad explains patiently. "What appeared as crucifixion was divine intervention, creating that impression while the messenger himself was elevated beyond harm." Later, alone with his closest companions, Muhammad shares more intimate knowledge. "Isa foretold my coming, calling me Ahmad, the praised one." Each messenger confirmed those who came before, while preparing people for those who would follow. Abu Bakr, his trusted friend, contemplates this cosmic continuity. So the message has always been one, though delivered through different messengers according to humanity's developing capacity. Precisely, Muhammad confirms. From Adam through Noah, Abraham, Moses, Isa, and finally completed through me, the essential message remains consistent. There is one God. Humanity is called to worship him alone, and accountability awaits in the life to come. He traces verses in the sand, the Arabic script flowing with mathematical precision. This final revelation shall remain preserved exactly as delivered, protected from the alterations that affected previous scriptures. Thus, Isa's true nature and message are safeguarded forever against human distortion. The companions listen attentively, understanding the profound responsibility of preserving this culminating revelation. Unlike earlier scriptures transmitted through generations of oral tradition before being recorded, the Qur'an is being meticulously transcribed alongside its revelation, every verse verified by multiple witnesses. Isa himself will return before the final hour, Muhammad adds, describing knowledge revealed to him about future events. He will descend as a just judge, breaking the cross that symbolizes misunderstanding of his nature and mission. He will confirm the truth that he never claimed divinity, nor desired worship directed toward himself rather than the Creator. The gathered companions contemplate this eventual cosmic vindication, how the messenger whose final earthly day began our narrative will himself return to correct centuries of theological misinterpretation before the world's conclusion. Thus the circle completes itself. What Isa foretold during his final hours comes to pass through Muhammad's reception of revelation. The preserved Quran becomes the criterion by which all other scriptural accounts are measured, distinguishing original divine guidance from subsequent human additions or alterations. Sunlight streams through stained glass windows in a modern university hall where scholars of various faiths have gathered for an interfaith dialogue titled Prophet Isa: Perspectives Across Traditions. The richly colored light forms a symbolic bridge across the diversity of participants, illuminating their shared humanity. Despite theological differences, an elderly Islamic scholar, with gentle eyes and a dignified bearing, addresses the assembly, his voice carrying the weight of wisdom earned through decades of comparative religious study. The figure known as Jesus to Christians and Isa to Muslims serves as both bridge and boundary between our traditions, he begins. In him we find our greatest point of connection and our clearest point of divergence. He gestures toward projected images, showing artistic depictions of Isa from various cultural traditions, Byzantine icons, Renaissance paintings, Ottoman miniatures, contemporary Islamic calligraphy, incorporating Quranic verses about the honored messenger. What truly happened during Prophet Isa's final earthly hours, he continues. This question has shaped world history, divided communities, inspired both magnificent compassion and terrible violence, yet perhaps the historical details matter less than the spiritual truths his life and teachings illuminate for all sincere seekers. A Christian theologian nods respectfully before offering her perspective. While we differ on fundamental aspects of Jesus' nature and fate, we share reverence for his ethical teachings, his compassion for the marginalized, his emphasis on spiritual sincerity over empty ritual. The conversation flows with remarkable civility, considering the profound differences represented. A Jewish scholar adds historical context about first-century Jerusalem. A secular historian discusses how political forces shaped competing narratives about Isa's final day. Representatives from Eastern traditions note parallel themes in their own spiritual frameworks. Throughout the exchange, a symbolic bridge gradually materializes in shared understanding, not of theological uniformity, but of mutual respect for differing perspectives, sincerely held. The Quran honors Isa as among the most elevated of God's messengers, the Muslim scholar explains. It affirms his virgin birth, his miracles, his exemplary character, his important role in divine revelation. Where we differ from Christian understanding is in his nature. We believe he was human, not divine, and in his fate, we believe God raised him directly to heaven, rather than allowing crucifixion. As afternoon sunlight shifts, casting new patterns across the gathered scholars, the conversation deepens to explore why these differences matter so profoundly. For Muslims, continues the elderly scholar, absolute monotheism, the oneness of God without partners or intermediaries, represents the essential foundation of faith. The Quran corrects what it sees as a critical misunderstanding that developed after Isa's departure, when some began attributing divine nature to the messenger, rather than reserving worship exclusively for God. A Christian scholar responds thoughtfully. While we interpret the evidence differently, we can appreciate the Islamic emphasis on God's transcendence. Our traditions might be seen as emphasizing different aspects of divine reality: Islam focusing on God's absolute unity and transcendence, Christianity on divine love, expressing itself through incarnation. This remarkable dialogue, unimaginable in earlier centuries when such differences typically led to bloodshed rather than respectful exchange, represents evolution in human capacity to hold differing truths in constructive tension, precisely the development Isa foresaw when speaking of humanity's spiritual maturation across time. As the formal discussion concludes, attendees break into smaller groups, continuing conversations with increasing warmth and openness. Something profound has occurred, not conversion or compromise, but genuine understanding across difference. Among them moves a humble maintenance worker, quietly attending to the room's needs while listening intently to the scholarly exchange. Something in his eyes suggests deeper connection to these matters than his role might suggest. When occasionally addressed by participants, his simple responses carry unexpected wisdom that leaves them thoughtful long afterward. The elderly Muslim scholar notices this unassuming figure and approaches him during a break. Their conversation, though brief and inaudible to others, leaves the scholar with an expression of profound wonder. As evening approaches and the gathering disperses, participants carry away not resolution of theological differences, but something perhaps more valuable: recognition that diverse understandings of Prophet Isa need not divide humanity against itself. The maintenance worker is last to leave, pausing at the threshold to look back at the empty hall now bathed in sunset's golden light. For just a moment, his ordinary features seem to shift, revealing something timeless and luminous in his countenance. Then he turns away, stepping into the modern world that still awaits complete understanding of the message he delivered centuries ago. Outside, humanity continues its complex journey toward comprehension of divine unity. Different paths wind through history's landscape, sometimes converging, often diverging, yet all ultimately leading sincere seekers toward the same eternal source, just as Isa taught during those final precious hours before his ascension, and just as he will confirm upon his promised return.